Consalia. We have today Will. Good morning, Will.
Hi, Jesus. Hi.
All good?
All good, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
all good.
and we have also our lovely guest Bobby Baja. That I will come in a minute to you. Good morning, Bobby. How are you doing
Good.
today?
Very well, thank you, Jesus. Nice to see you both.
Very good, very good. So well, we will reach 20 Celsius today in London with a lot of clouds. So what's best than joining our program and enjoy a cup of coffee or tea or hot chocolate, as I like to do. Anyway, just a small fact that we always like to talk about history at the very beginning. In 1876, Western Union rejected the telephone patent, calling it a toy with no commercial value. Furthermore, when mobile division was managed by a manager in most of telcos in the European Union in the 80s, happened something similar. The fixed division said, well, the mobile, this is our gadget that will know nowhere, right? So we see that a century and a half later from the Western Union rejection, we are still watching transformative tools get ignored, right? And not because they don't work, but because teams are not ready to adopt them, or they need real quick and tangible value they can see immediately, right? So this is the kind of topic we are going to be discussing today: technology, sales technology adoption. Will.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if you speak to most people in sales, they have a love-hate relationship with technology. Most of us use some version of CRM, but in today's example, sales tech, you know, 94% of reps have access to AI, but only 6% use it, which I was quite surprised to see. And that source came from the Sales Loft Sales Skills Gap report. Um, there's so many tools out there that are meant to enable the sales team, but adoption, that's another story.
That's true. That's true, Will. And that's the thing, right? So what we are asking today is, why does sales tech adoption fail? Or what can sales leaders do differently to make it stick? For that, we have a poll. I think Eddie and George, which are always running in the back and making this work and making sense, they will share with you the poll that we are presenting this week, which is about which is the biggest barrier to the sales adoption in your organization. It could be poor data quality, lack of leadership buy-in, clunky user experience, or other. Please comment below. So please jump into these, and of course, if you want to take the mic, very very happy um, to allow you to join our conversation. So today, to help to unpack this, we've joined by Bobby Baja. So he, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bobby, you're a senior VP to various companies such as ServiceNow, SAP, InfoCenter. You're now helping a number of tech companies to boost sales and build high performance sales teams, sometimes EMEA teams. So I think that you bring a rare perspective, right? You combine selling tech with making sure it gets adopted. Good morning. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, Jesus. Yeah, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me along. So, yeah, I mean, recognizing that from historical perspective, I've been in smaller tech startups to the larger tech companies, as well as within professional services side. So I've got a wide perspective of things, and I've had a lot of learnings through my career. So yeah, happy to share some insights. And I'd probably say, as you said, there is sometimes a disconnect between sales methodology and making sure that there's laser focus on the customer. And I think focusing on the customer and having that laser focus is the primary objective of whether you're going through a sales process or tech adoption. So yeah, happy to jump into it in a little bit more detail if you wish.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a lot to unpack when it comes to tech adoption. Bain found that 70% of B2B companies can't integrate sales play into their CRM or revenue stack. And it kind of tells us something's wrong, not with tech, but with sort of how we bring it to market.
Yeah, you're right, Will. So, Bobby, from your side of the table, what sales experience have you had in the sense? Do salespeople genuinely focus on the outcomes their buyers want to achieve, or do they often lean too heavily on the software brands, on the software's brand name, assuming that just because it's XYZ, it will be adopted and will work without question? So what's the most important part from your point of view in let's say in the pre-sales and sales perspective regarding adoption?
It's an interesting question, Jesus, and actually it varies, as I'm sure that you're aware. So from a startup perspective, um, for them to be, and if you're growing into a new tech area, it's essential that you're able to show value and therefore focus on the customer and customer outcomes. And to do that, you talk about the whole journey. So from the pre-sales all throughout the sales process and going as a handover into the implementation side, there has to be laser focus on the customer. And you're talking about outcomes, as well as the tech as well. So the tech has to work. But as I've worked in larger organizations as well, I've seen that dissipate somewhat because organizations recognize that is a piece of tech that they want to adopt. So, historically, companies would say, you're not going to get fired for buying IBM. And I'm sure that those types of words have changed to slightly different organizations out there as well. But just recognizing that companies want to take on this tech, but the focus on the outcomes from those organizations isn't fully delivered or understood. They just want to have that tech in, and they know that it will deliver some outcomes, but they're not focusing on those aspects. And that needs to be driven a lot of the times by the salesperson. So in the organizations that I've worked in, where that has fallen by the wayside, I've created that focus again to make sure that you're talking about value to the customer, so they recognize what the state of play looks like right now, what it will look like in 6 months, and what it will look like in 12 months down the line.
And Bobby, I just wanted to sort of move the conversation a bit to, when you're implementing a new technology into an organization, how do you address the kind of cultural challenges that some organizations face when they're trying to implement a new technology? BCG, for example, found that cultural resistance, not tech failure, is the top reason that adoption fails. And I guess my question is around, what is the right approach then? How can leaders support the adoption of technology for their wider teams? I'm just wondering if you could unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's again a really good question. So just recognizing most tech that you bring into an organization is to looking at creating some operational efficiency, making the lives easier of some people that are working within that organization, or giving more insights. And by doing that, there can be some resistance. First of all, people like doing things the way that they've done them historically. So there'll be that. And then secondly, people can be frightened of tech taking away their job. But you also have to recognize that tech is always going to evolve, and organizations will always evolve. And therefore, it's not about taking away jobs, it's about repurposing and making people focus on the key elements that are going to grow a business. So you take away administration burden, or you take away building out insights utilizing AI, but that means people can then do other things as implement the changes or whatever it may be. So it's bringing everybody along that journey. So if you look at different hierarchies within an organization, you have C-level people within an organization that have an overview of what they want to achieve, and they have a vision. It's about disseminating that vision and creating that cultural change and change management throughout that process. There's also another aspect that a lot of change that will happen within an organization, decisions are made by people that it doesn't always just affect them or their teams. It goes much wider, and it's about understanding how wide that new tech is going to be delivered within an organization and who it's going to affect. and bringing everybody along that journey. So just as an example, um, uh, we were selling into a very large banking organization in one of our deals, and we had to recognizing that change management, and before they bought the solution, they recognized that from a hierarchical perspective, that this is the one that's going to work, but it wouldn't work unless everybody was on board. They had 300 plus managing directors in the business across the globe, and they had to bring every single one of those along that journey and disseminate that information to those people. And it made our sales jobs a little bit more intensive, but it also made it much simpler as we went through the process. So we recognized what was necessary. And then for the decision to buy the solution became much easier as we went through that process, rather than there being a few unknowns and people disrupting that sales process. So we were able to have everybody on board.
Yeah, connected to this, thank you very much, Bobby, with this question that we'll mention to you. Do you think that the role of the salesperson has to evolve to ensure adoption? Is it time to start owning more of the post-sale experience, you mean? Because at the end, we are talking about, we are not talking about the technology itself, right? Or the product. We are talking about culture, people, strategy. So, in our consulting area, we always think about the 4 levers, right? Strategy, people, processes, and technology. So is that the sales people role is transforming into trying to embrace more things rather than the technical pro, let's say?
Yeah, so again, a good question. And I guess it depends on the maturity of the organization, of who takes on that responsibility. So again, in a startup, I would say that to be successful in a startup, you have to disrupt, and therefore you have to make organizations feel comfortable that going to a new tech that potentially is unproven, that they're confident that you're able to deliver it. And usually tech startups will deliver their solution themselves. So they won't have a professional services company that comes in, or they might have some smaller players, but there'll be a very clear handover or connection between the sales process and delivery. Those lines sometimes get disseminated and blocked when you go into larger organizations and you have custom success teams, and the handover isn't always there. I think it's always essential, and it's going to go back to that, where the technology is always going to be disruptive. There's always new technology coming out now. So even the larger players in the marketplace cannot just be the IDMs of this world, or the larger players that are automatically going to be bought. Organizations are going to look a lot wider and take tech to have an understanding that there's a number of ways to fulfill their expectation to get the value. And there's a number of different routes that they can take. But the decision making, I think, will come down to, are they confident that this is going to be delivered and implemented, and it's going to be utilized within that organization? And if you can connect those dots up, you're in a much better position to sell your solution and for it to be successful. And it's key for these organizations, not just the customer, but the tech organizations. If you have customers that have unsuccessful implementations, they're not likely to carry on with you. It's very easy to change now. But also, if you're looking at the growth figures that you're expected to bring, it's much more difficult to grow when you're losing customers.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bobby. I just wanted to follow up with the question around, one of the challenges that I hear is just staying on top of all the changes that are happening throughout the tech landscape. I mean, for example, Consalia, we use Salesforce. We know that just within Salesforce, there's a huge amount of changes happening within the platform. And one of the challenges we have is just staying up to date with all of the updates. What would you advise sales organizations when it comes to being up to date with the latest? Maybe that's a sort of how long's a piece of string kind of question, but is one of the challenges that I hear quite often from the clients we work with.
Yeah, good question. And I would relate it back to, again, value, right? So in this scenario, the salespeople are the customers, right? So they're the customers of Salesforce or a CRM tool, and recognizing the value you're able to get out of that. So as a sales leader, I will be utilizing Salesforce for data, recognizing where there are gaps. Is it a pipeline issue? Is it a sales execution issue? You're able to find out that type of information. What I try and always do is allow the salespeople that are working within my organization to take ownership of that themselves and utilize the tool, not just to feed back to the organization that I'm going to be looking at it, or the sales leaders or the CEO or the CFO, but actually from a sales perspective, you can look at the data yourself and make those changes yourself. I can only do, if I have 10 direct reports and then they have another 10 direct reports themselves, there's only so much I can go into specifics in that data. It's about taking ownership at each individual level within that organization and for them to create those insights themselves. And you're right, in new functionality coming out within that, it's about what's the usability. So this is how I use the solution. And it's sharing that knowledge, and this is what I'm looking at getting out of it. What do you want to get out of the solution, and what else do you want to learn about yourself as a salesperson to be more successful?
So yeah, you're completely right, Bobby. We have here a comment, kind of, well, a question from Philip Squire. Thank you, Philip, very much for doing through the chat. So he's commented that the Microsoft CEO today said that, or well, yesterday, he felt that tech software as a service solution is now a broken model to be replaced by AI agents that will do the work. What are your thoughts about it? I know it's very early stages, but even in Consalia, we are looking into dozens or hundreds of new AI companies investing heavily on solutions for sales professionals. What do you think about this trend?
It's definitely something that potentially could happen, right? And it's recognizing where we are in that evolution. I think we're at a crossroads where I don't know whether it's definitely true where the SaaS solutions is a broken model, but it is very much that you have different solutions in a marketplace that will be combined by an orchestration model that AI will look to bring together. So it's about bringing the data together. At the moment, SaaS models do sit separately and they do integrate with each other. But if you have it seamlessly done through AI and then AI giving you insights, the challenge for that is the governance that sits around it. So what type of information is it using to be able to give you those insights? Is it pulling the right information? Are we allowed to pull certain levels of information? So it's those types of things that will slow down that AI space. But it's definitely happening, and it definitely will make our lives much easier from a sales perspective, but also from a customer's perspective. But I think there's still evolution to be taken. There will be SaaS solutions out there that will integrate, that all have AI related to it. If you're looking at taking out that completely, then you're looking at an orchestration that still sits on top of those SaaS models.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. So the AI is quite, it's a trend, it's inspiring, but of course there are several steps to do, right? Because even if you connect the AI to software as a system, it's a sales tech, you still have the doubt of if the data is the right one. Do we have the right data? But at the end, once you have the right data, I think the important thing is what you do with the data. And if the AI can put some intelligence into it, it will be able to free time to the salespeople to dedicate on the account strategy, on the relationship management, rather than finding data, reporting data, etc. Right? So I think it's going to be quite interesting times we are having in front of us. So at Consalia, we see adoption not as a tech rollout, right? We see it as a behavioral transformation, and that means starting with values and mindsets. No, Will?
Yeah, I think I guess it comes back to the human side of things, because whilst AI hasn't taken over all of our jobs, it's us for us as sales professionals to adopt the latest in technology to become more efficient. And um, I think in order to do that, Bobby, what you were saying is completely right. It's how can you meet the needs of your clients and customers? Um, and from a human side of it, it should all be about enabling authenticity, client centricity, proactive creativity, and tactful audacity, which are Consalia's sales mindsets that we truly believe is the differentiator between what makes the difference between a good salesperson and a great salesperson. Um, yeah, Bobby, I don't know if you feel the same way as that. The people that adopt the technology need to come at it with the right sort of mindsets.
100%. So both from a sales perspective and an adoption perspective from a customer, um, as I said, from a sales perspective, it needs to be laser focused on the customer and the customer outcome, and therefore, as a salesperson, you need to be looked at as a trusted advisor. Are you
Yeah.
that person that the customer can feel that they're going to be successful in whatever their goals are for having that piece of tech being brought in? The piece of tech is not what is going to deliver the the outcomes. It's how it's going to be used, right? So it's a tool to get the outcomes that you're looking for. So and the person that is going to be making that decision and the people that sit beneath them need to be comfortable that whatever is being brought into that organization is going to help each of those roles and their organization achieve the goals that they're looking for. So they're all in a win-win situation. So it's a multifaceted sales process now across the board. And whether you're talking about selling to SMBs or enterprises, that mindset needs to be brought into play.
Yeah, and I mean, we see examples of some of our students like Barbara Crane, who wrote her dissertation on emotional awareness, reflective leadership, and helping clients adopt transformation programs. And Ed Hill applying structured thinking to drive transformation at scale. So, sort of, these are two examples of salespeople acting as almost consultants when selling in their tech solutions to their customers, and bringing people along the journey with them. Conscious of time, let's check in on the poll. What did you say is the biggest blocker to adoption? I'm just wondering if we can share
Yeah. Yes. Before we share, what do you think, Bobby, if you have to choose from poor data quality, lack of leadership buy-in, clunky user experience, or other,
Oof.
or
Well, it
all of them?
depends. Yeah, I think they're all important. And also it depends on who you're talking to within the organization. So if you're talking to leaders, then obviously you need to have buy-in from leadership. If you're looking at the people that are utilizing the solution on a day-to-day basis, it will be user experience. So it depends on the profile of the person within that organization. They're all important though.
Okay. I mean, the poll currently is giving like the winner to the user experience
Okay.
in front of the poor data or lack of tangible benefits. Um, yeah, I mean, if I can comment on this, my 2 cents is that, as I've seen in some organizations, when you are really able to demonstrate benefits and tangible benefits, even with some champions, maybe not the entire organization, the adoption grows exponentially, right? So I believe that in the moment that people recognize that there is a new technology, that somebody's using it and somebody's getting tangible benefits, that is more sales, more efficient sales, which drives to more bonus or to more, recognition. Immediately, immediately people just change their mind and jump all these barriers. That I've seen that in some cases in Spain and in the UK, where I mean, success stories and non-success, right? All of this. But when I've seen success stories, it's more like having some champions adopting the technology, demonstrating everyone else that this really works, right? And sometimes this has to come from the leadership, right? I mean, the leaders have to be like the first ones probably to start navigating that. I don't know what you think, guys, Will and
Yeah,
Bobby.
yeah. So I would say usually it is driven by from the leaders. But if you actually look at some sales organizations, like Salesforce or Workday, they will look at the end users first and then push the so they understand the challenges that the end users have, um, and then push it up through the organization. So they sometimes speak to the salespeople from a Salesforce perspective. A Workday will speak to HR people that are on the ground and find out where their challenges are. So they brought them along that journey, and then you give the bigger picture to the execs within an organization to say where are those. So what I'm trying to say is, whether it be top down or bottom up, everybody in that organization will have a different value prop or different value utilization of that tool. So one will be more macro and one will be more micro, but they both need to be interchangeable, and for there to be success, for the solution to be successful within that organization.
Do you think that the current, let's say, software as a service, as an example, right? Companies are facing this properly in the sales process? I mean, or are just focused to sell their product?
Um, I think again, it's very different in different organizations,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, and I will always look at a startup organization. A startup organization will not get off the ground if they didn't have that laser focus on the customer. You have some very large organizations that they're used to, and I'm not saying this is the case now, because it is changing very, very quickly, because the state of tech evolution is changing so quickly. But historically, there may have been the larger organizations that have had, they do recognize that people are just going to buy their tech no matter what. So therefore they will sell on, a bit of functionality and a bit of product rather than outcomes and delivery. So it is going to change. Everybody's going to have to focus on outcomes, value, and customer rather than product. But it's an evolution that will happen quite quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, agree. I don't know, Will, do you want to do any final question or remark before we go to closing?
I think just Bobby mentioned the word like a changing change quite often, and we hear change being mentioned outside of the technology. The world is changing so rapidly, clients are changing so rapidly, and tech is changing so rapidly, and I think it's how you adopt change is and how a salesperson can be agile and open to change is so critical in this world in which we're all operating at the moment. I'm slightly conscious of time, but I'm keen to just ask the audience really one last thing. If you've seen any tech adoption that's kind of been a great runaway success, or things that have failed, we're really interested to understand why that is. And we're also interested to understand your perspectives on what you think leads to good adoption in terms of technology.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Will. Thank you very much, Bobby, for being today with us.
No problem
Yes,
at all.
thank
Lovely
you,
to have a chat
Bobby.
with you.
It's been a pleasure. Next Thursday, same time, same place. We have already a new topic for the next Thursday. I will announce now, which is the change in the levy and the support from the government for level 7 and how this will impact sales apprenticeships. So we will be talking about that. Probably we will extend the session up to 45 minutes or 1 hour. We will have Philip Squire with us, and we are trying to get another couple of guests, hopefully in the session, to do like a round table, because I think it's quite important for the UK. And regarding the adoption, please leave us your comments. Of course, will cross interconnect with AI and all the topics we are working on, and we hope to be live very soon. So thank you very much, Will. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
your time, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone,
Have a
for
great day.
connecting.